Hi, everyone. This is Scott Nybakken for Dynamite Comics, and I'm here with otherworldly writer GREG PAK to talk about his new Supernatural comic book series, which is materializing in stores this October. Greg, thanks for joining us on the channel.
Thanks so much, Scott. I love the thematic verbiage in your
Yep,
intro. Well done, well done.
thank you. So, to begin with, can you fill our viewers in on where these new stories fit into the original TV show's existing continuity? Because
Yeah,
with 15 seasons, there's potentially a very big canvas for you to be working on.
absolutely. So we decided to focus on the first couple of seasons for this first arc at least, and so we're doing so the show is about. I mean, the nutshell of the show. It's about a couple of brothers who are on the road chasing monsters and ghosts and creepy crawlies and supernatural things.
Mm.
And the big fun part of the show is the dynamic between these brothers. One's sort of more straight-laced college boy, and the other's more of a dangerous character, or likes to think of himself as a dangerous character. As the show goes on, it gets into a whole mythology of demons and angels and all kinds of stuff, and how it's tied up in the histories and family history of these characters. We are sticking this first story arc in the middle of the end of the first season.
Okay.
And partly because that's before a lot of the demonology kicks in. So it's a little bit of an easier lift for brand new readers. You know what I mean? Like, you
Yeah.
literally don't have to know anything. You don't even have to have watched one episode of the show to jump in and enjoy the comic book series. If you're a longtime fan of the show, this is also just a fun time to revisit those early times in the series when the show is basically a Monster of the Week show, where every week these dudes on a road trip encounter new supernatural horrors. So that just felt like the best way to get our feet wet and get going with this storyline.
Yeah, that was like that leads into my next question, which was that like a hallmark of the show was that it followed the classic TV serial model of like having a complete adventure in each episode. But the episodes also like started to include elements of a larger overarching story that
Yes.
last for several seasons. So are you taking that approach with the comic as well?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's always a challenge when you're writing stories that fit into the existing continuity of a bigger, a big show or
Yeah.
something. I that was a big thing I grappled with when I was doing the Darth Vader books. But it's a fun challenge, and I dig it a lot. So, but that means that we're not, like, you have to be careful about what you do with the later things that happen in the show. Like, you can't, for example, using the Darth Vader example. I couldn't do that much with Luke because the big payoff with Luke comes in Return of the Jedi, and I don't want to step on that in telling earlier stories. I can dance around it and hint at it and sort of add a little more context and a little more poignancy and stuff like that. But I can't step on those actual moments. And there's similar challenges here, but at the same time, there's room, particularly when you've got this kind of episodic setup in these first season or two. There's spaces in between things where you can build out stuff, and there's also kind of, this is still when the brothers are still kind of figuring out what the heck is going on and what their own relationship is. So there's lots of fun stuff that we can still do with that to kind of deepen those little moments between the brothers, and yeah, so there's a fun emotional hook to play with there. We're also creating our own. We're creating some new characters and some new dynamics. So there's a new villain on board, so it'll be fun.
Mm. And like that was also my next question, which was like I like being between seasons one and two, as you said, a lot of the demon mythology that was growing up would be coming a little later. Can you tell us a little more about the new villain that the brothers are going to battle?
Yeah, I can't tell you too much
Mm.
because you're not going to know who this person is until this person reveals themselves. But I can say that this is a person who has a plan, a supernatural related plan, and that is maybe in opposition to, maybe it's the kind of thing that maybe they can form a partnership with these brothers. Maybe their interests will coincide for a while, but this person has their own agenda, and that might be a very, very dangerous thing to try. Um, I'll also say that the thing that makes the show the show. I mean, there are many things that make the show the show, but the thing that I think kept it around for 15 years are the emotional dynamics of the character dynamics. You know what I mean? So this villain is also a fun. The specificities of who this villain is and what their motivations are make them a fun dynamic with these two brothers. You know, like and this villain will react differently. You know, will trigger different things with the different brothers and. I mean, I always love it when you can take any two characters from a show and put them together and a scene just happens. You know what I'm saying? Like the
Yeah.
best ensemble casts work that way, and I hope this villain plays that way. And I hope you love him and hate him in equal measure.
And 2025 marks the 20th anniversary of the show's debut, which, and of course, a lot has changed since 2005.
Yes.
What, like, I think you were touching on this just a little earlier, but what is it you think about the world of Supernatural that has won it such a devoted fan base?
Oh yeah. Well, there's a lot of things. I mean, it's the character dynamics. I mean, it is the supernatural stuff is always a hook, and I think in those early episodes there's just a huge amount of charm and fun and jumping from different from place to place and finding new regional monsters and to tangle with. Um, the uh, the show also it does two things that I love because I love genre and I love human emotion. You know what I mean? Like that's kind of those are two of the, sort of the hallmarks of what I do. I think over the years. And the show has that has that in spades the 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 show is not scared of genuine human emotion and the show is not scared of goofy humor and I love that the Dean in particular is he's always quipping he's just a ton of fun and the dynamic between these two brothers is hilarious they're just always bugging each other and so it's just I mean fun is a big word for this show. I think that's at the same time that it's grappling with these big questions of life and death and guilt and grieving. I mean, grieving is a huge part of this show. I mean, if you're dealing with supernatural things, you're talking about death, and the show doesn't shy away from that. Um, so all of those things combined are a big deal. I also think that there's something to the fact that these two characters are big anti-authoritarians. You know what I mean? Like they are making
Yeah.
their own, they're figuring this thing out on the road. They're making their own rules because they are grappling with things that are more important than than being strictly adherent of societal mores or laws. I mean, they're doing credit card fraud from day one. You know what I'm saying? And they're constantly impersonating law enforcement. I mean, they break. I mean, I've been joking about this. They break like 12 crimes every single episode, which is kind of typical for any kind of mystery show. You know what I mean? There's
Yeah.
so many. I mean, countless cases of breaking and entering. You know what I'm saying? Like that's just
Yeah.
it's just the way it works. But like I mean, we live in a time when of increasing authoritarianism, and I think anti-authoritarianism in any form is refreshing and fun. I also think that there's something to the fact that the show is so tactile and organic and analog. You know what I mean? Like the show debuted in 2005 before the massive crush of social media. So they're not taking selfies and getting likes and you know what I mean? They're barely using the internet. I mean, and I think that even in one, I mean, they have a laptop that they plug in from time to time. I don't think they even. I think there's one episode where they even go to an internet cafe. Remember those? Um, and so that kind of stuff lends itself to cinema. You know what I mean? Like you're doing things in the real world, and you're not just there's no HUD, you know what I mean? We don't have any HUD displays. No one's, no one's got like a million different online voices in their ears, and it's not overladen with tech. So it
Yeah.
feels very real. And the comic book reflects that, you know what I mean? Like we've got these gorgeous pencils by Eder Messias, and there's just texture, and it feels like it all feels touchable and real and tactile, and I think that's really important for a supernatural show. You know what I mean? Like the more real everyday life seems, the more impact the supernatural elements can have.
Yeah, and like speaking of Eder, like I understand that he's a big fan of the original show. Um,
Yes.
yes, and like so, I wanted to see how you think his enthusiasts' knowledge and affection for the show shaped the look of
Oh,
the comic.
well, first off, I'm incredibly grateful for it because I haven't seen all, I haven't seen all the hundreds of episodes.
Yeah,
I am, I've seen a lot, but I do not have encyclopedic knowledge of the show. And so, like having folks working on the book who can keep me honest and steer me away from pitfalls is huge.
mm,
Um, but also just, he loves it. I think, yeah, if I'm remembering right, in one of the emails, he said, or Nate Cosby, the editor, said that it was his comfort show. You know what I mean? So he would
mm,
like watch the show while he was drawing other things. Now he gets to watch the show while he's actually drawing the show, on paper,
yep,
which I just love. I mean, when somebody is really into something, when somebody loves something as an artist, it shows. There's a care, and there's also just a deep understanding. He totally, I mean, when you see the pages, you're going to get it. You're going to see how much he gets it. You're going to see how much he loves the characters, and the show depends also on little moments between these characters. I mean, so much of it is, I mean, there's a big monster, there's a big or a creepy crawly or some kind in every episode, and there's spectacular action in the comics. But so much of why you love it and what you remember are going to be little moments, like as these guys driving down the road and just little exchanges they make, and the way they, the way they roll their eyes or eye each other, or run their hand through their bangs or whatever it is. You know what I mean? That kind of stuff. That character stuff is solid gold, both for the show and for the comic. And Edder's delivering.
yeah, and like finally, speaking of driving down the road, I want to make sure we address the controversy of
Oh yes,
the
the
car that the
car.
characters are driving in the comic book, because as people have already observed, like it is not the famous Impala that appears in the show. So you can give us the backstory on that?
Yeah. So, from my understanding, and you can edit this out if we're not allowed to say it, but from my understanding, we like it's a licensed book, right? And the
Yeah,
license gives us the right to use everything in the show and all the characters, everything except the car. For whatever reason, we can't use the car.
yeah,
So, so they're going to be driving a different car in the show, very similar to the original car, but it's going to be it's going to be a different, vintage, cool vintage car, because of course Dean would not drive anything other than a cool vintage car if he can absolutely avoid it. But there's going to be, yeah, I mean, there will be a reason for it. That's a character-based reason that you're going to see in the show, and there's going to be a payoff for that. So yeah, don't worry, friends. It's not something we forgot. It's something that we are, one of the, these projects are always stuff that seems like an obstacle. With this kind of stuff always ends up being a fun thing that can be additive. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
like the creative business is a business, and because it's a business, there are always certain restrictions you have here and there that don't really make much sense creatively. But then amazing creative stuff comes out of restrictions. You know what I mean? Like even just like the size of like this is an aside, but like the size of a comic book, you know what I mean? Like this specific size. This is another book that Eder drew, by the way, that I wrote. But that size of a comic book, it's kind of this random, very specific size, and because if I'm remembering right, it's because that was half the size of a newspaper page,
yeah.
and that's how
They were
comics.
folded over exactly.
Exactly, right. And that determined the size of comics back in the day. And now but now that those dimensions create, the space for how the creative story gets told. You know what I mean? And I think that's cool. That's fascinating, right? You know what I mean? Like we when you have any options in the entire world available to you, sometimes that's really stymieing as a creative person. It's like there's too much to choose from. So when you start to limit things, then suddenly it's like, oh, okay, well, now we got a story. And I think that's just because in human experience, like our stories and drama come from conflict, come from the points we hit barriers, you know what I mean? And so it's like you hit a barrier in real life, then you make some decisions and you grow as a person and you do things, and you take action as a result. And that's a story. And same thing in the actual act of storytelling. It's like you're told, okay, you got to write a haiku that's five syllables, 7 syllables, and 5 syllables, and now suddenly that's your restriction, and it forces you into doing something. And yeah. So anyway, yeah, now I'm comparing not being able to use the Impala to a haiku, and maybe that's entirely appropriate. So, but that's yeah. So this new car we have is our little haiku in the book.
Like we're all looking forward to seeing the final result. And I want to thank you for joining us and giving everyone a peek under the hood of this highly anticipated new series.
Thank you, Scott. Well, I hope the ignition fires correctly and everybody enjoys the ride. How about that? I want to give another quick shout out to my editor Nate Cosby, who is awesome, and my partner in crime on this thing as we head out and track down these creepies. And thank you so much, Scott. You're a total pleasure. It's been fun.
Thank you. And Supernatural #1 will manifest in comic book stores on October 22nd. So be sure to pre-order it now, and follow Dynamite Comics on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and X to hear more about all of our upcoming releases. Thanks for watching. Bye, everyone.